Snow had become a second sky, endless and unforgiving, swallowing every sound and every sin. In a hamlet forgotten by maps and mercy, mothers counted the hours not by clocks, but by how loudly their children cried from hunger. The chimneys had long stopped smoking, and every door creaked like an apology. Winter did not simply settle here, it ruled. And in that cruel season, the people walked softly, as though any sudden movement might shatter them like frostbitten glass. Anna Bauer moved through her kitchen with the quiet precision of someone who had learned to stretch nothing into something. A pot of boiling water hissed weakly on the stove, pretending to be soup. Her daughter, Lenny, sat wrapped in a threadbare blanket, her cheeks hollow, her eyes too old for 12 years. She traced shapes in the steam on the window, circles, hearts, things she no longer believed in. When she asked if there would be bread tonight, Anna's answer was the same as always. Maybe, a word fragile enough to break in her mouth. Outside, the village felt abandoned by time. The church bell hung frozen, the mayor's office boarded shut, the schoolyard empty except for the ghosts of laughter. Men were absent, dead, missing, or swallowed by a war that no longer cared for them. Those who remained walked bent against the wind, searching for food in empty fields and finding only memories. The people had reached the point where even hope felt like a burden, too heavy to carry. Rumors shifted like shadows. Some whispered the Americans were close, moving through the region. Others said they burned farms, took prisoners, showed no mercy. Fear grew in the cracks hunger left behind. And yet, under all the dread, a dangerous thought flickered. What if they brought food? No one dared say it aloud, as if words alone could jinx survival. Anna had heard many lies during the war, but she remembered one thing her father once told her. Monsters were easy to imagine. Kindness was harder. She held on to that memory as she stepped outside to gather snow with a dented bucket, the air slicing her throat with each breath. The sky was pale and endless, and the silence felt heavy enough to crush the earth. Then she heard it, a vibration in the air, distant, steady, unmistakable. Not thunder, not wind, engines, more than one. Her heart jolted. She froze, clutching the bucket, staring down the long road that disappeared into the trees. The sound grew louder, a low rumble spreading across the hills like a warning. The doors opened. Curtains shifted. People emerged from their homes, thin figures wrapped in fear and wool. The village gathered instinctively in the square, faces pale, breath rising like ghosts. Children looked to their mothers. Mothers looked to the road. Everyone looked terrified. Hans Brandt, the schoolteacher, stepped forward. He had once been confident, a proud man who quoted poetry and believed in a future. Now he simply whispered, "It's them," as if naming the approaching force might summon something worse. An old woman crossed herself. A young boy whimpered. No one moved. Anna held Lenny close, her fingers trembling. She remembered the stories. Women taken, houses pillaged, mercy a lie. And yet another story whispered beneath her fear, something deeper, older. Help sometimes comes from the least expected place. The first shadow appeared through the trees, dark against the snow. A truck. Then another. The engines growled, slow and steady, like beasts sniffing their way into enemy territory. The village braced as the convoy approached. A man shouted for everyone to step back. A mother cried into her shawl. Snowflakes drifted between the vehicles and the villagers like falling ash. The trucks rolled into the square, their olive paint muted by frost. American flags hung at their sides, dirty but visible. Soldiers in heavy coats scanned the crowd, hands on their rifles, not raised but ready. Their faces were young, their eyes wary. They looked nothing like the monsters the radio had promised. One soldier stepped forward. He lifted both hands slowly, palms up, in a gesture so simple it felt unreal. No fight, he said, his accent sharp but earnest. No guns. Food. The word food fell over the square like a spark in dry grass. People stiffened, unsure whether to believe him. A single can dropped from the back of the truck, landing in the snow with a dull thud. A child rushed to pick it up before anyone could stop him, clutching it like a miracle. It was meat, real meat. A tremor of disbelief moved through the crowd. Tears formed before relief could. The soldiers opened the back of the truck, revealing crates stamped with bold English letters. Anna didn't know what the words meant, but she knew the scent that drifted into the frozen air. Coffee, chocolate, bread, bread. For a moment, the entire village forgot to breathe. The soldiers began handing out rations, moving gently, cautiously, as though afraid to break the fragile beings before them. A medic kneeled beside a trembling old man, wrapping his frostbitten hands without hesitation. Another soldier smiled at the children and tossed them small wrapped chocolates. Watching their eyes widen as if witnessing magic, Anna stood frozen. Part of her wanted to run, part of her wanted to fall to her knees. Lenny tugged her sleeve. Mama, she whispered, voice shaking, are they saving us? Anna didn't know, but as a soldier approached her with a tin of soup and a wool blanket, offering both with the softest nod she had ever seen, she felt something shift inside, slow, painful, like something long locked away beginning to thaw. Maybe mercy was real. Maybe enemies could be human. Maybe winter could break. The village would learn soon enough that survival wasn't just about food, it was about trust. And trust, once lost in war, demanded a price. But for now, the snow didn't feel so deadly. For now, they held bread in their hands. The village did not sleep that night, not because of fear and not because of hunger. Hunger, for once, had loosened its claws, but because no one knew what tomorrow would bring. Even with food in their hands, even with warmth settling into their bones, trust was a fragile thing. War had taught them that gifts often hid traps, and kindness could vanish like smoke. As lanterns flickered in windows and the wind moaned through broken shutters, people whispered to one another in cautious tones. Some believed the Americans would leave by sunrise, taking their mercy with them. Others feared the soldiers would demand something in return. Anna lay beside Lenny, listening to her daughter's soft breathing, trying to silence the unease twisting inside her. The blanket the soldier had given them lay heavy and warm over their bodies. And yet Anna could not forget the look in his eyes, a strange mixture of sorrow and guilt. By dawn, the village gathered again, drawn by the sound of men working in the square. The Americans had built fires, real fires, tall and bright, and large pots hung above them. The smell of boiling broth drifted through the cold air, so rich and warm it almost felt unreal. Children approached first, unable to resist the scent. Soldiers laughed softly as they handed them bowls, making sure the smallest ones ate first. Anna watched from a distance, hesitant to step forward, though the hunger in her stomach gnawed painfully. She studied the soldiers carefully. Their uniforms were dirty, their boots worn from miles of marching. These were not conquerors. They were boys who had seen too much, carrying the weight of a war that had shaped them into something older than their years. Hans Brandt approached one of them. A tall, quiet soldier who always stood near the trucks, watching everything with solemn eyes. How long will you stay? Hans asked in broken English. The soldier hesitated, glancing at his commander before responding. Not long, he said. Just until the road ahead is clear. Maybe a day. Maybe two. A day. Two at most. The reality spread through the villagers like a cold shadow. This mercy was temporary. A brief pause in a war that had no mercy for anyone. Anna felt both relief and disappointment battle inside her. She wanted the soldiers to stay, not for protection, but for the strange, unexpected kindness they brought. She wanted Lenny to feel safe, even for just a few hours more. But safety was always borrowed in times like these. Later that morning, something stirred in the woods beyond the village. A rustle, a crackling of branches. Two soldiers raised their rifles, scanning the tree line. The villagers froze. Children clutched their bowls. A bird burst from the trees, wings slicing through the sky, and the soldiers lowered their rifles slowly, but the tension lingered like a warning. Danger still lived in these forests, in these mountains, in the hearts of men desperate enough to do anything to survive. As the village settled again, the Americans began to repair what they could. They cleared the road, chopped firewood, and helped reinforce collapsing walls. One soldier knelt beside a broken water pump, muttering to himself as he tried to fix it with tools far too small for the job. The villagers watched with a mix of caution and awe. No German soldier had ever repaired anything for them war had taken from them. These strangers seemed intent on giving back. Then came the moment that silenced the entire square. A young soldier emerged from the back of a truck carrying a box. It was small, wooden, and old, the corners frayed as though it had traveled a long way. He set it gently on the ground, then opened it. Inside lay dozens of photographs, faces of women, children, friends, and strangers. German faces, civilians, some smiling, some solemn, some alive, some likely gone. The soldier held one up, a photograph of a family sitting by a lake, and approached the nearest villager. Found these, he said softly, in abandoned houses, on the road. Maybe, maybe they belong to someone here. Silence washed over the square. People approached slowly, cautiously, as though touching the photos might undo them. Anna stepped forward and scanned the images. She did not expect to find anything familiar, but a photo near the bottom made her breath catch. It showed the schoolyard before the war, children running, playing, laughing. In the corner stood Lenny, only 5 years old, her hair in braids, her smile wide and unbroken. Anna's knees weakened. She reached out, fingertip trembling, and touched the image as if touching a memory she had forgotten she possessed. Lenny peeked over her arm, eyes widening as she recognized herself. Mama, I remember that day. The soldier watched them, his expression softening. Something in his eyes flickered, a quiet ache that mirrored their own. But before peace could settle, a loud crack echoed from the forest. A single gunshot, sharp, close. The Americans tensed immediately. Their commander barked orders. Children were ushered behind adults. Soldiers rushed to the edge of the village. Rifles raised. The villagers' hearts pounded as the tension thickened, heavier than the snow clouds above them. Another crack, then silence. For a moment, it felt as though the whole world held its breath. Anna grabbed Lenny, tied, pulling her close. The fear was raw and familiar, sliding back into her life like an unwelcome shadow. The Americans scanned the trees, their breaths visible in the frozen air, their fingers twitching near the triggers. Something was moving out there. Something, or someone, was watching. The soldier who had given Anna the blanket stepped beside her, voice low. Stay close. Don't let go of your girl. He didn't need to say why. Everyone knew. Mercy had come to the village, yes, but danger had not left. And sometimes the line between the two was thinner than snow. The forest seemed to breathe, a slow, deliberate exhale that carried dread with it. Every villager felt it. Every soldier sensed it. Even the snow, which had fallen so gently earlier, now drifted in sharp, nervous flakes, as though the sky itself was unsettled. The Americans took positions, forming a loose line at the edge of the village. Their boots crunched in the brittle frost, rifles braced against trembling breasts. Anna held Lenny tighter, shielding her as if her arms alone could block whatever danger lurked beyond the trees. The crack of that gunshot still echoed inside her, replaying again and again, like a cruel reminder that peace, no matter how fragile, was never free. The commander signaled two soldiers to advance. They moved cautiously, steps measured, eyes fixed on the dark spaces between the branches. The villagers watched in heavy silence. No one dared speak. No one dared move. It felt as though the entire square balanced on a knife's edge. Minutes dragged by with the slow ache of suspense. Even Lenny, usually unable to stay still, barely breathed. Anna could feel her daughter's heartbeat, fast and frightened, fluttering like a bird trapped beneath her coat. Suddenly, a shout erupted from the forest. "Halt!" The voice was American, tense and sharp. Another voice responded, a man's voice, German, exhausted and strained. The villagers jolted. A few of them instinctively stepped forward, but the Americans held up their hands, urging everyone to stay back. Snow-crunched branches snapped. Then two soldiers emerged, one supporting a limping figure between them. Gasps rippled through the village. The man was young, no more than 20, maybe less, with a gaunt face and hollow eyes. His uniform was German, torn and muddied, the insignia barely recognizable. He stumbled, barely able to hold his weight as the soldiers guided him forward. Blood marked his sleeve, darkening the fabric, and his lips were blue from the cold. The villagers recoiled at first, fear rising like smoke. A German soldier, one of their own, or a deserter, or a remnant of something darker. Anna felt Lenny press her face into her side, trembling. The commander approached the wounded man cautiously. "Weapons?" he asked. The soldiers shook their heads. One of them held up a rusted pistol they had taken from him, unloaded, useless, more symbolic than threatening. The young man lifted his head, struggling to speak. "Bitte, I surrender. No more fighting. I ran." His breath rattled with cold and pain. "I heard shots. I thought maybe someone could help." Some villagers exchanged wary glances. Others softened, seeing not a soldier, but another victim of the war that had chewed up so many lives. The Americans whispered among themselves, deciding what to do. The medic stepped forward, checking the wound quickly. "Bullet graze. Infection setting in. We can treat him." There was no hatred in his voice, only weary duty, but not everyone shared that calm. Old man Fisher pushed through the crowd, his cane digging into the snow. His face was lined with grief, eyes full of bitterness. "He's one of them," Fisher spat. "My son died because of uniforms like his." His voice cracked, brittle as winter branches. "You help him in what? He thanks you by shooting you the moment you turn your back?" The young German flinched, shame flooding his face. "I never shot anyone," he murmured, "not once." But Fisher wasn't listening. Years of loss poured from him like melted ice. "You think we can trust him?" He glared at the Americans. "We barely trust you." The commander met his gaze steadily. "We're not here to harm you. Or him." Then quieter but firm, he added, "War is ending. No need for more dead boys." His words hung in the frozen air, heavy with truth. Slowly the villagers stepped back, uncertainty rippling through them. The medic gestured for help, and two soldiers carried the wounded German toward the fire, settling him down gently despite the tension. Anna watched, feeling that strange ache again, the conflict between fear and compassion, between the wounds of the past and the fragile hope offered in the present. Lenny tugged on her sleeve. "Mama, he's just a boy." Her voice was small but steady. Anna looked down at her daughter, seeing in her eyes a softness that she had nearly forgotten how to recognize. Children saw truth simply. War had not twisted her heart yet. The young German's eyes fluttered open as the medic cleaned the wound, steam from the fire curling around him. He looked lost, as if unsure he deserved warmth. When his gaze met Anna's, it held a plea, not for forgiveness, but for a chance to exist without being hated. As the villagers slowly retreated to the edge of the square, watching the Americans work, another sound drifted across the snow, faint, metallic, the unmistakable clatter of something heavy being dragged. The soldiers stiffened instantly. The commander raised a hand. Silence fell again. From beyond the far end of the square, where the road twisted between two hills, Shapes began to appear. Dark, moving slow. Not Americans, not villagers. Anna's breath caught in her throat. The commander muttered a curse under his breath. Everyone back, now! Soldiers scrambled into position. Villagers clung to their children. Panic rippled like a cold wind through the square. Because whoever was coming wasn't coming in peace. And the fragile thread holding this moment of mercy together was about to snap. The shapes on the distant road sharpened as they drew nearer. Slow-moving figures dragging something bulky through the snow. At first, they looked like shadows bent against the wind, but then the shadows multiplied. 4, 6, 10, more. The Americans tightened their formation, rifles lifting in silent warning. Villagers pressed backward until their spines touched the cold walls of houses, clutching their children as if the walls themselves might keep them alive. Anna felt Lenny's small fingers digging into her coat. Trembling, but unbroken, the moving figures advanced without haste, almost casually, as though the village were already theirs. The first man stepped into clear view. He wore a German uniform, but not like the wounded boy near the fire. This uniform was pristine compared to everything else in the village, though patched with dirt and soot from days in hiding. The man's coat hung heavy, his boots well maintained, and his face wore a hard, rigid expression, carved by anger more than cold. Behind him came others, some uniformed, others wrapped in mismatched winter gear. A ragged mix of retreating soldiers and desperate men clinging to lost orders. They were led by Sergeant Wilhelm Drexler, a name the villagers whispered with bitterness. Drexler had once passed through the village months earlier, barking commands, confiscating food, and punishing anyone who dared question him. His presence meant cruelty. His presence meant danger. Now he was back, and not with mercy. The commander of the Americans lowered his rifle slightly, but didn't relax. Identify yourselves, he called, voice firm, echoing across the frozen square. Drexler didn't stop walking. His boots struck the ground with deliberate confidence. We are German soldiers, he said coldly. We seek shelter and supplies. His eyes scanned the villagers, lingering on their faces as though searching for disobedience. Then his gaze locked onto the Americans. And you, he added, are occupying our land. The tension snapped tighter. The Americans shifted, ready. The villagers shrank back, their breath turning to misty clouds of fear. Anna's heartbeat thundered in her ears. This wasn't like the wounded boy who had stumbled from the forest. This was different. Drexler radiated authority and resentment. He walked like a man still fighting a war that was already lost. The American commander stepped forward, calm but unyielding. War's ending, and he said, you know that. Lay down your weapons. No one needs to get hurt. Drexler's lips curled into something between a sneer and a smile. Ending, he laughed softly, darkly. Not for us. He lifted his rifle. His men followed. Dozens of barrels pointed outward into the square like cold, black fingers. A ripple of terror passed through the villagers. A cry rang out from somewhere in the crowd. The Americans instantly raised their rifles. Mirroring the motion, snowflakes drifted slowly between the two sides, peaceful only in appearance. For a moment, time froze. The entire village stood suspended in the terrible silence before violence. Then Drexler noticed the wounded German boy lying near the fire, being treated by American hands. His eyes narrowed, rage flashing like steel. You traitor, he hissed. You run, you beg for mercy, and now you lie with them? The boy tried to sit up, pain twisting his face. I'm done with fighting, he whispered. It's over. Drexler's jaw tightened. There is no over, not while I still stand. He stepped forward, raising his rifle toward the boy. No! Anna cried before she could stop herself. Her voice cracked across the square, raw and terrified. Lenny tugged at her coat, but Anna stepped in front of the wounded boy on instinct, as though her body moved before her mind. She didn't understand why. Maybe it was the softness she saw in his eyes earlier. Maybe it was Lenny's words. He's just a boy. Maybe it was simply because she'd seen enough death, enough cruelty, enough winter. Drexler stared at her, surprised and furious. Move, he commanded. Anna shook her head, though her legs trembled so badly she feared they'd give out. He is no threat. He is a disgrace, Drexler spat, a stain that needs to be erased. The American soldier who had given Anna the blanket stepped beside her, his rifle steady but not aimed. His presence was quiet strength. Back off, he said to Drexler. She's not moving. Drexler's men shifted impatiently. The Americans stiffened. The villagers seemed frozen by the weight of the moment. Everything hung in the balance. One breath, one heartbeat, one twitch of a finger from collapsing into chaos. Finally, Drexler lowered his rifle slightly, though his eyes still burned. We will take what we need, he said, voice sharp as frost. Food shelter, supplies. And you, he pointed to the commander, will step aside. This village belongs to us. The American commander stood firm. No, these people are under our protection. Drexler laughed again, but there was nothing warm in the sound. Protection? When did the enemy protect anyone? A murmur spread through the villagers. They remembered the fires, the blankets, the bread. Their eyes, once fearful, began to shift with a new understanding. Mercy had not come from those who claimed to defend them. It had come from strangers who owed them nothing. Drexler noticed the change and rage darkened his expression. Don't forget who you are, he barked. Don't forget where your loyalties lie. But loyalty meant nothing when your stomach was empty and your children starving. Loyalty meant nothing when the men in your own uniform had taken more than they ever gave. Hans Brandt stepped forward, surprising everyone. Our loyalty is to life, he said quietly, and you have taken enough of it. Drexler's face twisted with fury. He lifted his rifle again, aiming at Hans. Gasps erupted around the square. Anna clutched Lenny close. But before Drexler could fire, a sound rolled across the road behind him. A low engine rumble. More American trucks were approaching, their silhouettes rising over the hill like an iron tide. Drexler spun around, fear flickering across his face. For the first time, the balance of power had shifted, and every man in the square felt it. What came next would decide everything. Mercy, survival, in the future of a village caught between the last breaths of a dying war.